Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the technique crashing wings and some of the more important principles, rules, theories, concepts, and strategies of this technique. So as we go forward, the thing to keep in mind here about this video is that this technique highlights two predominant ideas or concepts. The first one being obscurity and the second one being destabilization. So as we go forward, keep in mind that we're going to be doing these two concepts in a variety of different ways, which makes it kind of interesting for you. So let's talk through the ideal attack of this technique because it gets us into those concepts. So what are they doing? The attack is from behind, it's a minor, and they're grabbing us hands free, so our arms are free. So this brings in the first concept of point of view. My point of view, first person, my attacker's point of view, second person, and third person, or you, the observer. So why is this important? Because this starts bringing back to that major concept of obscurity. In this case, obscurity is in the first person's perspective, or my perspective. In other words, they're behind us attacking us from behind. So let's get into that second concept. The second concept is destabilization. And this brings in the third concept, timing. Why is that important? Because they're coming up and grabbing us. If we don't do anything, they could potentially pick us up off the ground and destabilize us, or they could just simply squeeze us and start causing injuries to us and turning from a minor into a major. So why is timing critical? Because we want to make sure that we start reacting to this attack prior to it being fully applied. So let's talk through how we go about doing that. So we're going to break it into two sections, the lower section and the upper section. So let's start with the lower section. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be obeying rule number one. We're going to establish our base. So in other words, we want to stabilize our base by starting to destabilize our opponent. Two things for one. So how are we doing that? Well, we're not doing a lot of destabilization, but what we are doing is we're beginning to shift their center of gravity off their center line to the right in this case. So if you can see it. So why is that important here? Because what we're going to do is we're going to prevent them from having good lever. Remember, we're getting our lever and we're removing their lever so they can no longer really pick us up or even fairly effectively squeeze us. So that is actually a good thing with multiple effects here, all by stabilizing our base and destabilizing them. So now that we've talked about the lower end of it, so let's talk about what's happening with this upper end, because then it starts bringing more ways in which we're using these two predominant concepts. So we're going to start bringing our hands up because what we want to do is prevent them from getting that grab and controlling their weapons. So this brings in the concept of obscurity again. In this case, what we call is weapon obscurity. And this brings in another concept of the outer rim. What we don't want to do is bring our hands up because notice what happens is they can see what's going on. What we want to do is keep them in our outer rim so that we keep object obscurity to them. But we get path of travel what we need in order to prevent them from doing this grab. And this also will carry us forward into what's moving into the next piece, continuing to expand upon that destabilization of our opponent. So how are we doing it? So once we get these arms into place, prevent them from getting that grab, what we want to do is continue to shift our weight in their initial direction. So in this case, towards our right. So notice what happened here. What happened is I began to further destabilize my opponent by further pulling him to the right. But now we're going to talk about obscurity from a different perspective here. Is now we're going to be using this leg, which is outside of their cone of vision, to V-step around the opponent and then continue to expand upon that destabilization through maintaining our lever. So if you notice, I keep my back up straight and I begin to destabilize them. It puts them in a bad position. And the reason why I was able to do that effectively was because of the fact I was able to keep my arm here. So as I moved my weight, notice their weight shifted with me to where I can get to the point where I can destabilize them. And that's the second way in which we're doing this obscurity. So now the next piece of how we're going to be doing this obscurity is through the striking of this weapon to the chin. So we're going to be going to this open-ended triangle here, but we're doing it through contouring. But what's that have to do with obscurity? Well, we're staying outside of their cone of vision. So in other words, we're sliding up the body here, staying outside of their cone of vision so that we can get the hit. So if you'll notice what's happening here, they're already in a bad position. I'm sliding up to get this hit. But I also want to set up my next weapon, so I don't want to make a cocker-sucker motion. Remember, Kenpo relies upon economy of motion. So I don't want to do a hit, bring my hand up into a line, and then hit. So what I want to do is those at the exact same time. So I want to hit and bring my hand up at the exact same time. So notice what just happened to their face. This brings in the fourth way in which we're going to be doing this obscurity. So their cone of vision, we stayed out of it here, but what else can we do? Well, we can move it. So notice what happened. We moved their cone of vision to allow for my hand to be able to hit wherever I want. The ideal face typically is the groin or the sternum. It doesn't really matter which one. Through formulation, you can change to each one you want, depending upon how you want it. But the important part here is that you, A, are in a zone of obscurity on your opponent, and B, you can create that angled instance as you see on your opponent. And then this completes our destabilization by taking them to the ground. Okay? So now that we've walked through the entire technique, let's do it once fairly slow so that you can see it being executed. And then cross out the cover that you see here. Up. Hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system just a little bit better. Thank you very much.